Right, Tony, we're live, mate. We're recording. Hello.
All right, let's go. Is it going?
Hey. So, do you want to just call me? Do you want me to just call you by first name, Tony? Yeah, or do
Yeah.
you? Yeah, you call that right. Cool. So, Tony, good to have you on, mate. Good to see you. It's been a while.
It's good to see you.
I know, right? You're looking well. You're looking good, mate. Um, so I always start these because there's some familiarity between me and you. Known you a long time. I think the same before we hit record. It's like nearly 2 decades, really. Coming up to that anyway. And I need to say this. I've just got to get it in there that I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't. This is just absolute, absolute, right? That I would not be the person I am today. I wouldn't be here today doing what I'm doing. Don't know where I'd be. I'm not sure I'd actually be alive if it wasn't for you. Right? You was the instigator,
Yeah.
the catalyst. You used the disruptor. You disrupted my status quo that I was in. And that status quo was delusion, madness, insanity, addiction, suffering, hopelessness, loneliness, all of that, deep depression. And you disrupted that. You came in and fucked all that up for me. You fucked it right up, mate, and you got me out of it, and for that you're forever my brother, mate. I love you deeply, and I've got so much gratitude and respect for you. So I just need to open with that.
Thank you. Do you know what? As well, I'll remind you. So it's in your book as well, and it tickled me when I was reading the book. So I remember when we met, and I already knew about you through one of our mutual friends, and as you do, I thought there will come a point where that curiosity, because of the type of person that I knew that you were, will get the better of you, and we might cross paths, and we did. And so that was around the campfire and what have you. But I remember when you came round, and I remember we were playing some great tunes, probably quite a lot of Omni Trio, Bookham, a few different the original Good Jungle Ice. And you kept nipping to the bathroom, back,
Haha.
and you mentioned this in your book, right? And I remember thinking, because I'd kind of like, the message had come to me about getting clean and living your dream and still being involved in things you enjoy. And that it doesn't matter what somebody else is doing. It matters what you're doing and what they're seeing. It's not what you're saying. It's not what you're, you know, uh, for want of better terms, it's how some people actually appear as well. It's not what you're preaching, it's your actions. And I was thinking, like, you've chose to come around and you're seeing that I'm here. So it doesn't matter what you're doing, it's what you're seeing, what I'm doing, and that belief will come. And yeah, I remember you was nipping to the bathroom and coming back, and I just thought, I'm just not going to respond or react to it. I want you to see that we can be here and you can be doing what you're doing despite whether you think I know or not, and I can be doing what I'm doing. Therefore, you're going to know that you can also do what you actually want to be doing.
Yeah.
Hopefully, would have rubbed off, and and I feel like it did. And then you took it, so it the the catalyst for change can come, but it's like you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You came to the water and you drank. Yeah, so yeah,
Yeah.
props to you, man. It was a great experience. Yeah, one that hoped would go, and it did, and it's great to see. It's lovely to see you. And yeah, just it's been a while, man. It has. It's been
Mm,
a while, and we've both had a journey, so it is
yeah.
good to see you.
Yeah. I've got a lot of nostalgia associated to that time. I really have. I mean, it's just so fixated in my memory forever. It's the whole anyone listening, if you've ever been through, sounds quite cryptic. We can get into it a little bit more, but you know, um, another way of putting that was, I was still deeply enmeshed and entangled in addiction, substance misuse, and me nipping to the toilet was me, you know, facilitating that habit, if you want to call it that, whilst Tony's in full remission from it and recovery and living a very different life, sober life, you know, and yeah, God, you just showed me what was possible. Exactly what you just said. You know, you embodied it, and for the first time in my life, I saw that someone was, you know, it was possible. You showed me it was possible, and that was very attractive to me at a time when I was really at my deepest, you know, lowest ebb of human existence. And of course, I'm pretty sure I was good at masking that. Yeah, I'm all right, mate. I'm all good. We the Joker, you know? So yeah, very nostalgic talking about it. Um and it's just a story that once played out now, you know, it's quite peculiar to be sort of feeling like it, yeah, did that even did that was that real? Did that happen? Was that actually me playing that role? It's very strange. Anyway, here we are years later. So I put it, I remember writing about it. I saw you as like you was like my mentor at that time. You was the first mentor I ever felt I had in my life at 34. I was 34 when that all played out. And I never really felt like I had a proper mentor. You know, I never, I had people, I think like I might have had some bosses that represented maybe, you know, like I was the apprentice and they were the master, or whatever you want to call it, you know, but not in the way that I needed it, you know, in the way that I really needed it.
You know what I think that as well, like so that, so and I try to do this like at work now as well. That's actually my role. Like it's basically, you know, we've got it's got its own fancy terminology, but it's basically peer mentoring,
Mm,
coaching people into better ways of living their own life. But I remember because we'd met around the campfire and the tunes were playing, right? And because I knew that you must be quite familiar because you knew some of the producers as well, and I knew that it wasn't about going on like a cognitive behavioral talk with you or a 12-step talk with you or a smart recovery talk with you or a, you know, let's get sober talk. It was about letting you hear and see and believe in the music and see
mm,
how much I was and all that. I just had to be myself and play records with you. I think you actually came round with a few tunes.
mm,
I remember it was Bookham Atlantis and that beginning, that and then
mm.
finally, Stanton Warriors has done a great remix, but I won't divert too much. But uh, it was about being in the moment with you, with the music and seeing, letting you see, and particularly because of the trips back and forth to the bathroom, that I was having just as much of the same experience as you were,
Mm,
my way as you were in your way. And that if you wanted your experience to be your experience, it was just as possible for you. But I just knew that I didn't need to sort of I didn't need to, like you said about the mentoring side of it, I didn't need to be anything other than what we were supposed to be doing that night, which was playing some tunes and listening and enjoying music together. I
mm.
remember when I was a kid, right, and I was supposed to be revising for my GCSEs, and I wasn't. I was basically smoking weed, sat with a ghetto blaster uh, in a park, right, listening to Stone Roses. And I remember what that feeling was like, you know, of the youthful freedom, you know,
Mm.
that blissful ignorance of like ever needing a job. Why would I revise to get enough to get
Yeah,
just that, just non-existent? I'm listening to Stone Roses with a ghetto blaster with a headphone. It's amazing.
yeah, yeah.
And it was about recreating that innocence and that kind of in the moment with music because it's enough being in the moment in any experience that somebody actually wants to have. I've realized
Mm.
is just enough. And you came round with a bag of records. You wanted to be clean. You
Yeah.
wanted to be off all the drugs, and you wanted what your version of sobriety was. And it wasn't. I wasn't there to tell you what your version was. I didn't know what it was, but I knew what mine was, and I knew you loved music as well. And I thought, if you see that, you might
Yeah.
grab something in that and think, I'm going to key into that and find what it is that is Dave's version of that.
Well, mate, what you just described, absolutely, that was it. It's exactly that. Maybe did I know it at the time? Not sure, but now you're talking through that how it was for you. That's how it was for me. Like I say, it was just something that was really accessible. For the first time, felt like I was connecting to something that was pure. And it was potent. It was really alluring. It's very attractive to me. So anyone listening, it is possible, man. To, you know, um, I saw. I went and saw. I was telling you, I went and saw Richard Ashcroft last night, right? And he's got the song "Music Is Power." I think it's called "Music Is Power." Anyway, and I was looking around me, and I'm standing there sober, and I'm surrounded by, there might have been other people sober. I'm pretty sure there was actually, 'cause there's a lot of kids, like young kids on shoulders and stuff. I'm pretty sure they were sober. But I was looking around me, and it's exactly what you're saying, man. It's like your life doesn't have to stop just because you're gonna, change your lifestyle habit. And the power of music, man, is what binds everyone together. It's something really freaking powerful, just like what Richard Ashcroft's writing about and singing about. And I mean, he's a deeply spiritual man. Um, whether he says it himself and that's his words, but that's how I relate to what he's doing. He's on stage and he's almost like orchestrating everyone in that. And there's thousands of people there. I'm one in thousands of people that are all just sort of connecting to what you described when it was just me and you in that space.
Yeah.
It's powerful, man.
Stuff, isn't it? Like it's, and I think that was what was probably the most appealing to me about the jungle music and the campfire. I mean, it's interesting you say that. I mean, like that's where we actually first sort of met, was around that campfire in Hertfordshire. But it's that tribal thing, isn't it? There's something
Mm,
in all of us, I believe.
mm.
Drums or a voice or any kind of instrument. But for me, it's particularly in drums. And when that starts to happen, and there's more than one, and you get that hundredth monkey effect.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, that,
Yeah, it happens, man.
yeah, that's something that I was just saying with me. Like, I feel like there's something in me I feel like we've got unfinished business, me and you, Tony. I feel like we're gonna do a little full circle. I'm on this quest where I'm at, and that's playing out at the moment. You're on your path, which we'll get into. I really want to explore, all the good stuff that you've been doing and your journey and, what you're doing now, current day. But when quite shortly after me getting sober, we started to collaborate on that level with the music, right? And you knew the guy, Alex Hillier, the professor, the incredible producer. And very quickly, it's amazing that it's like how quickly you can accelerate your creativity, your um, passions. All my passions started to, just like the flames of that fire. My passions just were roaring. You know, it's just everything came alive and everything just came together at that moment.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite uncontrollable, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, big time.
Like the hormones are, which I like. I finding that stuff really interesting, Dave. I tell you. Um, but yeah, is it? It's like the fire starts burning, and I remember, yeah, it's almost like somebody throws a load of petrol on it, in the beginning, and
Mm.
so yeah, so I met Alex. Alex actually, how I met him, I was playing on a station in Hartford, and he came in. This is way back when there was chat rooms, and he came into the chat room and he was naming certain tunes that I was playing. This is on all on vinyl, and I was thinking, this is somebody who knows their stuff. And we got talking, and yeah, I said, oh, it'd be good to speak to you a bit more when I'm off the station and not trying to mix at the same time and type and all that stuff. And I spoke to him. It was back when MSN Messenger got home.
Mm,
It's my MSN Messenger. It took about an hour for it all to load up.
mm,
Yeah. And we got talking, and that's how I met Alex. Excellent producer, and
mm,
someone who'd seriously sat indoors and really learnt his craft because he wasn't a musician. He didn't know music theory, but he was just unbelievably good at what he did with.
mm,
Back then, I think originally he was on Cubase, and then he was using Reason.
mm,
Eventually moved to Ableton. But yeah, did we just we got lucky really. We just all kind of met at the right time with the
mm.
right kind of flavor and Alex with the good production style. Me and you with the gift of the gab like no one else had kind of like charged in recovery with the gift of the gab and DJ experience. And then also your creativity and that flair of something new, like a bit more broad that came in.
Mhm,
You introduced us to Smithy, you know, and the crafty clothing and all sorts of
mm.
things. So it became like a really sort of rounded, three-pronged attack. Yeah.
Yeah, I often think what could have been, if we'd just stuck with it, and I was the one that um I just needed to um find my own. I don't know, there's something in me that's new. I just had to go in a different direction, which I have done. But I always often wonder if I hadn't done that, what I believe we could have really,
Mm.
like, not saying just because you two carried on, but I don't know. I just feel like we'll never know. Who knows? But maybe there's a unfinished business.
The second chapter,
Yeah,
a little bit older as well, because I think it was the right thing to do. I think each of us stepped back at the right time for each one of us and
yeah,
had to then go and do different things.
yeah,
But yeah, it creates more space later down the line.
mm,
Or, you know,
yeah. I mean, I went back to college, as you know. I went and trained, became, trained to cut hair, trained to style hair. Ended up in London doing all, ended up working in music, working for artists and labels and that, doing hairstyling for, like, ended up going on tours and all sorts. It's just mental. So I sort of stepped out of one sort of role within music and then ended up in a completely different one. It's just big bonkers, for anyone listening, right? It's amazing what you can do when you sort of change your lifestyle habits, become present, because that's the key thing. I became present in my life. Um, it's amazing what you can do when you just actually stop fucking yourself over and get clean and get real and get present and step into your authenticity and your the true essence of that connectivity and the flow of life, start to join the flow of life and start to connect to that synergy with other people that are vibrating on the right frequency. Because that's what it was. I was on a really low, I was vibrating on a very low frequency. And then I was suddenly going from that to I was then vibrating on an extremely high frequency. And then that's when shit happens, man, and doors flew open and then flames of creativity and passion and everything just you couldn't stop me. And I'm still in that vibration now. It just keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger. It's a freaking beautiful thing. And it all started with you, Tony, man. So thank you. It's a beautiful thing. So
because the role that I'm in now, I remember. So when what happened? So when I kind of like made some more decisions about stepping back from certain things, it was around about 2016, and I then started to try to re-engage with like being, you just mentioned about being present and becoming more present to what is it that I actually want out of life. And I met a few different people, and so I was volunteering for um, a mental health charity in a institution in South London, and I was originally going in as a volunteer to try to run a music workshop, try to give back, and it turned into a really cool, just 2 hours a week DJ workshop where people that were residents in this institution could play the music that they wanted. When I say DJ workshop, it wasn't about teaching people to mix or anything. It was just letting them play one tune after the other that was important to them. And I got a lot from it, listening to other people's versions of their happiness and their joy. And so I was doing that. And I was also doing a little bit of building work, so I was to get by. And I then got a opportunity to do some volunteering in a recording studio opposite. It was in Brixton. It was a good vibe. Like there was a lot of stuff going on, really interesting people, and but I knew I could feel there was that pull coming slowly but surely back to situations which might not have been the healthiest for me to be in. And literally, just as that was happening, that was when I got the opportunity to do the work that I'm now in full-time employment with the charity, do some volunteering. And I was going into the community, into detoxes, into hostels, bail hostels, um, what they call wet houses, where people are, very entrenched in drugs, alcohol, lifestyle, and behaviors. And I was going in as a volunteer to help promote and educate around the testing for bloodborne viruses,
Mm.
hepatitis C. And I was talking to people and starting that talking thing again, where you actually go beyond, the fact that somebody perhaps is presenting as being drastically underweight, perhaps not very capable of managing the things that we might take for granted, like basic, you know, tasks in the morning, and actually getting to speak to the person and listen to the person and see who they are. And I was getting so much from it. And, you know, it makes me really emotional. What happened? I've been doing it for about 4 months, and I'd never worked in that field before, other than volunteering. And a guy called Chris, a job opportunity came up, and a message came through on my phone, and he went, "There's a job. It's full time. It's paid work. I think you'd be absolutely amazing. I want you to go for it." Now, Chris was the guy who got me into the volunteering, and I just took a chance. I thought, all right, I'll try. So I've gone on the website. I've started my application, and then I've got in touch with him, and I've said I'm really struggling with the application because there's a lot of gaps in my CV where I'm living a colourful lifestyle, and I'm not sure what to do. I'm into the office. I went into the office, and him and another full-time worker spent hours with me at the PC, helping me understand how to write what I needed to write and how not to write and overshare, and how to explain myself in a way which was going to be heard in my strengths rather than my weaknesses. And I got an interview from the application, and during the interview process, they clearly identified there were some gaps, but they could see my strengths, and they said, "Would you be willing to retrain and go to, do higher education? Because we think you've got the skill set. And from what Chris has told us about your volunteering and the feedback forms we've had, you're really good at what you do, but there are certain things that you could improve." I jumped at the chance. I said, "Well, of course, I would." He said, "All right, we'll get back to you." And when they did offer me the job, when I spoke to Chris, he said, "Tony, you don't think that I climbed up this ladder not to be waiting at the top, ready to put my hand down to pull somebody else up. All
Mm.
to do is the same for somebody else."
Mm.
it's a beautiful world, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. When you are, like you said, around the people that are vibrating in their space of life, it's like that. It's a bit cliche, but that old saying, if you keep what you've got by giving it away,
Yeah.
he was still giving it away years later. You
Yeah.
know, I've made it a point of mine, and I'll probably get into it with a bit later, but someone I work with, the way they got the job is that exactly the same thing. The opportunity came and I was at the top and I saw them and I went, yeah, come man, let's go,
Yeah. Lovely.
through.
It's a really important thing. It's really important. Yeah, keep what we've got by giving it away. I always, when I first come about that sort of saying,
Mm.
I was like, that doesn't make sense to me. How can you keep what you've got by giving it away? It doesn't make sense. It's contradiction.
Yeah,
But I get it. And I got it, and I get it, and I,
yeah,
I do it. I pass it on. I get it. Um, and it really is true. It's true. You got to pass it on, man.
mm,
And whichever way, whether that sometimes you give your time freely, sometimes it's, there's a work element to it.
yeah,
It doesn't matter. It's still that mantra, that ideology, the concept of doing it is very significant to creating karma, I guess. I remember early days for me, you was the one that I remember this. I don't know if you remember this. When I when that all came about when we first met, I was still working. I was doing what I always say is skullduggery. I was daylight robbery. I'm going out and removing sums of money from people, not like with a gun. I'm not doing that. Not that sort of skullduggery. Not a highwayman, but like I was a salesman. And the sort of salesman I was, is a bit wide
yeah,
boy, yeah. And I remember you saying to me, Dave, man, you might want to think about that. Not good karma. And for the first time, I actually really resonated with that. We all know, we know it's a very common term, or we got to watch your karma, man, or whatever. But only then did I really connect to what it actually meant.
yeah,
And like a lot of things, becoming present in your life, conscious, going from unconscious to conscious, y- you understand the laws of life,
mm, yeah, yeah.
and you
It's so
start
true.
and you start to apply them, and then you have a different outcome because of that.
Yeah, there's a price tag to everything, in the value. Like so now I mean, so as I was saying to you actually before we started recording, there's a level financially that I'm at the moment, which is, I'm getting by and I'm managing, but the reason I'm managing is through being particularly cautious. As everybody knows at the moment, the world's quite an expensive place, particularly in the UK anyway, which is where I live. So I'm not sure how it is for everybody globally, but there's a richness within me now um, that is drastically different to before. I was saying I've got a friend, someone who's been helping me with some fitness class. They're actually quite a good boxer, and I've been helping them with one aspect of their life, and they've been helping me with the fitness aspect of mine. And they were saying to me, they're not quite sure if they're in this space of like, you keep what you've got by giving it away because they wanted to be able to do it in a certain way. And I said, well, how's that training going that you're doing with the young lad at the gym? This is someone our age, and they're training a young lad for a fight. I said, he's shaping up really well. I said, do you not think that you're actually keeping what you've got by giving it away by doing that then? And he was like, oh, yeah. And I said, you're really skilled at what you do. You know, what you're giving that young lad for free because you enjoy doing it. I said, is what we're talking about. It doesn't have to be the kind of sort of specific where that keep what you've got by giving it away comes from within the drug and alcohol field, about when you've got the kind of knowledge, pass it on. It's it within your life, you know, in your
Yeah.
everyday living, wherever your skill sets are. If you're actually giving them away, and what I found is what what it means to me more than anything now is so what I get to keep when I'm giving whatever I'm giving away is that center space where it's the quiet place that's ready to receive life,
Mm,
the creative part of me, that bit that operates and vibrates on that level where I will see something that is attractive as attractive, and I will see something that isn't attractive as not being attractive. And for me, that was an absolute revelation because I'd kind of got those the wrong way round a lot of my life, where, you know, shiny objects appeared really attractive, but were actually, when you got closer and closer and closer to them, they were actually quite dull, quite blurry, and quite muddy, you know. And it was all back to front for me for such a long time. You know, the idea of what was appealing and going to be good for me was really, really wrong. And that's another thing that's happened to me over time. I've realized lots of paradoxes and contradictions, even like the simple statement, you keep what you've got by giving it away. It seems like a real contradiction and a paradox, but it couldn't be more true. There's so
mm.
many things like that that have become, you know, more and more. I mean, so I work in prison, right? And the one place I was avoiding as much as possible of being in my whole life, now you can't keep me out of the place.
The irony.
Yeah, the absolute irony. And
I
most
know.
that I speak to, when they see how, how lit up I am when I start talking about where I work, they're like, "Oh, I just don't get it, you know, because it seems like such a place that you wouldn't get that from."
Yeah, yeah. Right. I want to land on this. Right. Let's get into this. Right. I there was a point when I was doing some delivery driving. I was delivering toilets. Right. And I delivered one to Pentonville prison.
Yeah.
Right. And the delivery drivers, you go around the back, the main wall at the back on the main road on the back. You know what I'm talking about. And then you go in through the main sort of deliveries, go in, and so you're actually essentially inside the prison, but you're not inside the prison. And just that alone gave me the heebie-jeebies, man. Because I'm like you, I was like, I was in a prison. That's for me, that was mental um, illness, suffering, delusion, addiction, whatever you want to call it. That formative life that I lived, that was my prison. That was, the shackles that bind me, the prison of my mind, right? Entrapment. Um, so going into somewhere like that, yeah, how do you sort of, because you said you're lit up now, what
Mm.
was it like when you initially, do you know what I mean?
Very, very different. Yeah, absolutely heebie-jeebies. Um, the first 6 months of the role, so I was shadowing someone who'd been a prisoner themselves, had rehabilitated on multiple levels. So obviously the drugs, the alcohol, but also behaviors and actions, you know, because obviously you, generally speaking, you can't work in a prison if you're still committing crime. So, so I was shadowing them, and I think the first thing that I had to get over more than anything was that sense of self-doubt. You know, when you enter a whole new dimension of the work field, which I think you were actually talking about again just before we press record, where the responsibility is totally different for you now, and you know you're carving out a career doing what you're doing rather than being a salesperson or somebody who is doing the hairstyling and what have you, stuff that you know. And so it was getting over that sense of self doubt in the beginning that I am capable of doing this job. Everyone was telling me I was, but it was about me knowing that I was. And then I was in the environment that was, it's quite frightening, I suppose, is the right word at first, because you're all of a sudden, in somewhere and you haven't got keys to get yourself out of there, and there are a number of doors preventing you from getting out very quickly,
Oh
and
my
you have
God.
to rely on a number of people to get you out anyway. And then you're inside with people that you don't know, that are in there for whatever reason they're in there, and you don't know that. Um, so it's quite nerve-wracking, yeah, in the beginning. But quite quickly you realize that, or I certainly have realized, this is, I say quite quickly, I would say probably within the first couple of years, that predominantly speaking, within the field of men that I work with anyway, it appears to me that there are a lot of men that have not had very good male role models in their life, and perhaps have even been brought up in a single parent household, quite possibly with a mother who's had to work 2 to 3 jobs to enable the children to stay safe, warm, fed, clothed, and in school. So hasn't been able to be there a lot of the time. And so you might, quite often I meet men when we get into their life story, that they haven't had that many people around them, and particularly at that critical age, where they're learning about things, and then they've tended to skip school or go out from school and be outside and meeting other people, not quite so savoury characters, but that might have made other opportunities that I would have described moments ago as being shiny and appealing
Mm,
to them, to create a stream of income and money, and then they're earning quick money and maybe taking some risks. That's predominantly what I've seen, is a lot of things like that, and
mm.
takes you beyond that sense of, oh, it's prison, it's scary. You actually realize you're actually just among a lot of other people that have, found themselves in situations. I appreciate there are a lot of other types of people that are in prison, but they're not generally the sort of people that I would be doing my day-to-day job with. So yeah, I'm speaking specifically around the people that I work with.
So how much time are you spending in there? Like, is it like a day thing?
Yeah, so I do. I'm in a full-time role, and so I would say probably 3 to 4 days a week on site, so in different prisons. So I cover all of the 8 London male prisons, and then between 1 to 2 days a week where I work from home doing the reports.
Wow. I want to ask you, so just so anyone listening, and so I'm clear as well, because I kind of know enough about what you do, but your role, you're in these prisons, you're with these men, these some of them young men. Um, are you holding a space for? Is it one to one? Is it group? How's it all work? What you're doing. So it's mentoring, right?
Yeah. So I run a peer mentor program. So in each prison, the aim is to have at least 2 peer mentors that will actually basically do what I do. And so that's the idea. And I suppose the grand sort of like idea ultimately is to do what was done for me, which is that someone will completely transform their lives to then eventually step into a role to then help someone else transform their life. That's how this whole thing started. As I said, so the guy who shadowed me was in prison himself originally as a prisoner. We're probably one of the largest charities in the UK to employ ex-prisoners. Uh,
Can we name the charity if it's yeah?
Hepatitis C Trust. Yeah,
Say that again, Tony. Say it again.
Hepatitis C Trust.
Okay, great. We'll put a link in.
Yeah,
Right.
brilliant. Yeah, and so what we do, so I'll talk about what I do, but yeah, it's also so that they're so linked. So the reason that I do what I do is to try to create the outcome of what the charity as a whole is trying to achieve. I'll just speak briefly about that first. What we're trying to do is help people understand the risk factors with regards to hepatitis C. Hopefully, some people have seen in the news recently, more and more over the last couple of years, that in this country and many other countries, but I'll just speak about the UK. We were buying blood through the late 60s, 70s, and 80s, and early 90s. When there were blood shortages, we were buying blood, and we were buying it from American prisons and from um, people that were challenged and living on the streets. And unfortunately, lots of people that are in prison or challenged and living on the streets may have been involved in, injecting drug use or other activities where blood-borne viruses are much more prevalent. As a result, what we found, and it's been in the news recently, is that many people were infected with HIV, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C through either blood products, perhaps the haemophiliacs. That was the most famous, is feels like the wrong way to say it, but that was the one that got the most publicity. The Trelong School, boarding school, where they gave the very first ever plasma products to haemophiliacs so that they didn't have to risk, when they had a fall, going in an ambulance, getting to the hospital to have their clotting factors so that they could actually heal their wounds. They had it in-house. But this plasma blood products that they had come from the blood banks which had bought the blood, and HIV, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C was starting to spread through the communities. It's interesting that this the very first talk around how HIV happened actually finger pointed one particular community group of people. It's highly unlikely that was the case, which is becoming more and more clear now.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's a bit like that with the hepatitis C stories as well.
yeah,
There's some horrific cases of people that got absolutely finger pointed and ruthlessly given horrible abuse in the community by people, and weren't acknowledged until recently that it was actually through infected blood transfusions and stuff like that.
mm,
We're trying to educate as many people as we can on the risk factors. And so my job in the prisons is to educate people and help people understand what the risk factors are. Is to identify people that would most likely be at risk and to run the education classes and the pathways through the treatment processes, and educate men in jail who show an interest in education to become peer mentors to educate other men in jail
yeah, yeah,
and carry, the message around hepatitis C, how it's spread. The differences are huge. Once you go into any form of living space where you're sharing with other people, and when most of the usual things that we take for granted are removed, like they are in prisons, risk factors increase dramatically because you don't have access to simple things like bleach and certain cleaning
mm,
products. You know, um, just as an example, a really quick example, when you're shaving or when you're, say, hair clippering, the men might be going on a visit, they might want to look good, so they just use the hair clippers that may have been used on somebody else, and they might have used disinfectant, but disinfectant doesn't kill hepatitis C. That's why you see products like barbicide in barbers, but you don't get
yeah.
that in jail. So there's lots of transmission routes that open up that wouldn't normally be thought of. So my job is to educate, inform, and then peer mentor men to be able to educate and inform. And then we run groups, and rather than me facilitate the groups, I get the peer mentors to facilitate the groups.
Right.
And I try and empower them to start to educate themselves and do the groups and learn that they can be in a role where they can do this,
Mm.
or anything actually, where they actually start to see and grow as people and change behaviors. Yeah.
So it's keep what you got by giving it away. You're passing it on to them. They
Yeah.
become empowered with the awareness, the
Yeah.
information, the knowledge, and then they pass it on. And through passing it on, you become more empowered. It sort of just reinforces your knowledge and your awareness, and on it goes and on it goes.
And it
It's
keeps
really great. Yeah, it's really great work.
Thank you. In the prisons, what you notice is so somebody like me. So you have your official prison staff who have to wear the uniform, and then so there's a barrier there. for the prisoners to, communicate. And then you have people like me who go in who don't have to wear that uniform, and there's less of a barrier. And then you have the men that are a resident living in the prison themselves. There isn't a barrier. They're what they say is listened to with much more open ears. And
Yeah.
so what we've discovered over time is when we really want to get a message across, it works much better from person to person, peer to peer,
Yeah.
as we all know. And
It's the same in the school system, as you know. I've done a lot of work in schools. I think you've done work in schools, have you? I can't remember. Yeah. But yeah, just straight away thought of my work, and now and again I still go into schools, the education system. Done a lot of work in PRUs, pupil referral units, which is the sort of bridge between mainstream school and prison. They're the schools where, a lot of them might end up in a prison. And there's a similarity because you've got the 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 authority teachers, and in your case it's the prison guards, the staff, and then you've got the civvies,
yeah.
the civilians, or whatever they call you. What do they call you? Have they got like a name for you guys?
So what we have to do, so yeah, I have to, because they constantly call me sir.
Do they?
They, so I just call me Tony, you
Yeah.
know, same civvies, yeah.
It's the
So
same in school. It's the same in school. They call you sir, and I'm like,
yeah,
man, just honestly, don't. No, let's get on a level. Let's get on a level, man.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell you a story. So there's two stories actually that I'd like to tell you, but I'll tell you this one first. I've got loads, but there's two that always stand out to me. And I was working with this one guy, and I've gone into the prison, and the reason that I started talking to him was the staff, healthcare staff, um, had explained to me that he'd refused testing on admission. So when a prisoner first goes into a prison, they have like the admission process. Part of that admission process is it's not mandatory, it's offered a screening for hepatitis C, hepatitis B, and HIV, and then some STDs. And understandably, some people in the beginning don't want the finger pricked, and they're scared of needles and what have you, and they're not interested. And they want to get settled in, and that's not top of their priority list. So this guy had refused the admission testing and had then continued to refuse when he'd been reoffered it every 6 months. So anyway, so I've been called in to go and have a chat with him because they know, as we've just described, there's less of a barrier with somebody like me. And as we were going to a private room, and we have a discussion, and I don't tell him that's what I'm there for at first. I just explain who I am and what I do and why I do it, everything that I've just shared with you about the peer mentoring. And he explains what his current role is in the prison. And because the prisoners do loads of the work, the prison couldn't run without the prisoners. It's unbelievable the amount of work they actually get done. And so I say, it sounds like you'll be absolutely brilliant as a peer mentor for me. So then I explain a bit more about what I do and then approach the testing conversation. And let him tell me, I don't tell him I know, I let him tell me that, he's not done the testing. And so that's fine. I don't make a big deal out of it. And then the next time I see him, just inquire a little bit more about what was the reason behind your actual refusal now that you're getting more education as we're getting into this training more and more. Has it made you think a little bit? And he starts to explain to me why. And he talks about that space where, and I was so guilty of this in the past, the not knowing what the result of something is. I pretend to myself is better than knowing because I'm frightened that knowing might actually be something that I don't want to know. Knowing might actually also be something that I do want to know, but the fear of the knowing that it might be something I don't want to know, I play the game. I play the Barry back and forth game with myself where, well, if I don't do it, then I don't know. So I don't have to worry about not knowing if I know whether it's good or bad.
It's not there. If it's not there, it's not there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I talk to him a little bit each time. And over 6 months, I'm just coaching him closer and closer and closer. And I know when the moment comes because I know his release date is coming up and he's got about 2 years. So I also know that that means he can get across the DCAT, which will be a transition to helping him prepare more for the community. And he's been doing a brilliant job and everything. And then I explained to him, one of my regrets in my life, and I talk about a not knowing situation that I've been in. And I talk about when I knew what space was created inside my mind. And he is willing to take the risk with me. And so it's not normally something I would do, but I get permission to do it. And so I find the healthcare assistant and I talk to them about the situation and say, he's not going to do testing with anyone, but he'll do it with me.
Mm.
We get a private room and we do it. And we do the testing and we have to wait 15 minutes and I'm with him and I'm talking him through the 15 minutes and he's talking to me. And I've seen the control lines come up, so I know every test has worked and we now have to wait 15 minutes. And there's one test in particular that he's very concerned about because of certain actions that he's had in the past. So I coach him through the process of what that means if he gets a positive result and what it means if he gets a negative result. Anyway, turns out he gets a negative for all three. Breaks
Hey,
down, absolutely breaks down. And I let him have his moment where he breaks down and I see that release of the years that he spent in the not knowing, pretending he's all right with not knowing because not knowing tells him he doesn't know whether it's positive or negative outcome. And let him have the moment. And honestly, it felt like an absolute eternity and also a split second at the same time. Because we were in there together. We've been in there from the moment he allowed me to do the test with him. And then I asked him the question, and I said, "So now, what are you going to do with that space?" And it just blew his mind. And I see him light up and come alive and realize all that time and energy that I spent on the being okay with the not knowing, even though I'm not okay with the not knowing, because really I want to know, but I'm scared to know in case.
yeah.
He realizes and he says, I'm going to start some new courses. And he started,
Oh man.
and it's amazing, there's those moments like that. And for all the moments that are extremely challenging, for all the moments where, it hasn't gone the way that I wanted it to, for all the moments where I've seen people repeatedly in and out of prison over and over again, it's those moments that are absolutely priceless and keep me going.
Tony, man. Oh, I've got the absolute tingle shivers, the hairs of, that's really made me feel really fizzy, right? I really relate to what you're saying, really relate to, you can pull it out of context, but I relate to that headspace of all of that mental, emotional torment and you bury stuff, it's it's such a common term, sick as your secrets.
Mm,
And you got these little things that we have that we just want to bury because if we bury it, exactly what you said, what you just took us through, I really relate to that, because as soon as you have clarity, and connect to your truth, the truth of the matter, you just dare to reveal it,
mm,
whatever that may be, and trust that it's going to be okay no matter what. And that's why it's so significant what you do in your role to hold that space to enable someone to connect to that truth. It's such a potent, beautiful, fucking powerful thing that you're doing for people. You're literally setting people free within a prison. So yeah, man, that's just freaking beautiful, Tony. Like honestly, thank you for sharing that. It's really, really powerful story, man.
mm, mm. It's
Really
big,
powerful.
like, I was saying before, I know it's challenging times financially, right, and what have you, but there's a richness inside me that is ironically being given by people that are in dire circumstances. And again, just to be really, really clear, so the group of people that I work with are generally people that probably have had problems with drugs and alcohol or have sold um, something that they shouldn't have sold. Guess what I'm saying there is I do appreciate that there are people in prison that have done some things that, you know, everybody in general finds extremely difficult to wrap their head around and would find it difficult to speak kindly or nicely about those situations.
Mhm.
And so that guy, for instance, what had happened with that guy? He had got hooked on cocaine and had ended up selling some cocaine, ended up getting into a fight, and had ended up in prison. But his story wasn't just the cocaine and the fight and the ending up in prison. He was a well-educated man that had just found himself in a bit of depression, had decided to, drink a few more times than he should have, then had ended up partying a few more times than he should have, and then had ended up trying to make a bit of money in a way that, you know, he shouldn't have, and then ended up having a fight which he shouldn't have, and but there was far more to him than that. And prison actually saved him in the end. He got away
Mm.
from his problems for long enough and met the right people, but was invested, just like you described at the beginning, enough to see an opportunity that came and grabbed it with both hands. And it's it is that mad irony that in reality, so the one place where everybody is finding lots of things that people think are really important in the world, a lot of people find a level that I've met people who are vibrating higher than me, way higher than me, and they're locked up, but they're
Wow.
locked up. They're not in a prison. I literally met a guy just over a week ago who is in a wheelchair, has got over cancer, and was quite clearly telling me, I am not in a jail. You know, I might be pushing this around a prison site, but he goes, I'm not in a jail. And he talked me through his mindset around the cancer. And it was unbelievable. I actually approached him because he was carrying a lot of muscle for somebody in a wheelchair. And I was really impressed with his physique. And I wanted to talk to him about what he was doing because I'm well aware that it must be quite difficult to do a lot of exercise if you're in a wheelchair. And that with the prison diet, the food is quite difficult to build muscle on if you're in a wheelchair. Um, there's certainly enough calories if you're lucky enough to get them, but they're not, if you're not getting as much physical movement, then actually burning those calories would be quite difficult. So I ended up having a chat with the guy, and the effort that he puts in out of the chair when he's in his cell to doing his workouts, remaining healthy inside his mind, was just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And that was another situation where it was something or nothing for the reason that it was actually there in the grand scheme of things.
Mm.
Yeah,
So it's mindset,
yeah, yeah,
mindset, and your heart, where your heart's at, because it's mindset, heart. You know, is your heart have you got a strong heart, have you got a strong mindset? Do you certainly need one to be in there?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Surely, I can only imagine.
Yeah, people definitely, it can either make you or break you, that's for sure. And obviously, there were two sides to, as there are in everything. There's the yin and yang of life, and there's the yin and yang of life inside there. And I feel really lucky that I certainly, one thing I am absolutely certain about is I couldn't be a prison officer. What they have to do, what they have to see, and what they have to bear is unbelievably challenging. You know,
I've heard it said before that prisoners might just be in there momentarily in the grand scheme of things on in their lives, over the course of their lifespan. They might just do a little chapter, or some obviously have to be in there for life, whatever. But I've heard it said before that, the prison guards, they're in it for life as long as they're working there. Do they really ever go home and
no,
put it down?
yeah, it's unbelievable what they actually do. And again, I think some people, as we see everywhere, are perhaps doing the job with a lot of heart. And
Mm,
you see them; they're invested. I'm not
yeah,
saying everybody is, but there are certainly some that are really invested. But I think
yeah.
what they're trying to actually tackle is extremely difficult. You
Do you feel it's like a holding space, or do you feel like because there's like your organization and the great work that you guys do, there's other people that go into the prison service, they do prison service. I know that, you've got all the 12-step recovery programs. Feel like they do a lot of prison service. They have speakers going in, they run groups and encourage people in prison to take the program and run with it.
Right.
So there's stuff going on in there.
Yeah.
But do you feel, and there's the work element, you said that the prison wouldn't run without the inmates actually making it,
Mm.
contributing to making it work, right? And the running of it.
I think
Um,
some of the um, some of the challenges with the way things are at the moment are perhaps when so for the external workers, so for people like me and other people who work for other charities and other organisations that come in to provide the groups, hold the spaces, and do the uh, sort of extracurricular stuff like maybe rehabilitation groups, um, yoga groups, different things, other things that people might, a music group, find inspiring and help them, but might not be specifically in the. It's a bit like like at school, right? So you have maths, English, science, um, PE, uh,
History.
history, right? Best it may be seen as your sort of correct, in inverted commas, core subjects that you're supposed to do because they are what is going to make you a very good human being.
Hmm.
Then you might have certain people. I was probably, well, in fact, I was definitely one of these. The art class and the drama class were actually much more valuable to me, and I got so much more from it than I did the other classes.
Mm,
But it perhaps wasn't recognized as well.
yeah.
It's a bit like that in prison. So you have your core prison education classes that are already set in stone by the prison. So we actually have to fight for our spaces
Yeah.
as classrooms, private spaces, time. And if you haven't got keys, you're also reliant on the prison guards being able to get the men out of their cells if they're not already out of their cells and make sure that they're informed that I'm giving the space on whatever it is, as are all the other charities. So there are some challenges to do with certain things. They might not see quite as valuable that we might think are just as valuable.
It's the same. It's this sounds very familiar to me. It sounds like the school, the schools, it sounds like the education system. I'm with you, like I'm one of them people who is a creative. I've
Yeah,
got this sort of like, if you want to use the current, trendy word, I've got neurodiversity. And I need that. I need the neurodiversity to my experience. I can't just sit down and do textbook, traditional learning. I find it really hard,
yeah,
so I need to be moving around. I need movement. I need fluidity. I need creativity. And it pains me as it does you. I know that the institutions kind of,
yeah.
it's like, come on, we need to get with the program, people. But um I've heard it said, I don't know, you might be able to help out here, Tony, with your insight into it. I've heard someone else say that they work in the education, they roll out alternative workshops in the school system, right? Um, and they were saying that, a lot of young men that end up in an institution that you're working in, the prison service, in the prison system, a lot of these men are undiagnosed or diagnosed ADHD, having ADHD, right? Now I don't know. I'm just paraphrasing. I don't know if that's got any substance to it. Have you noticed
Yes,
anything in there that might suggest that's got something to it? Yeah.
absolutely. I think there's actually a guy who understands this and has done a lot of writing on this, who actually goes into prison. So I was actually at a seminar with him. So I went in with so there's a lady called Rachel Gow, Dr. Rachel Gow, who's a nutritional psychologist, works with children specifically. Um, and there's another chap called David Breakspear, two excellent people. David's written a lot of papers on the school to prison pipeline.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Both of them are absolutely convinced, as am I. And I work with one of the best neurodiversity managers I've ever worked with, a lady called Alexandra. And yeah, what I've seen appears to be that there are huge amounts. I would say 70% of the people I work with are neurodiverse. Um, and I think it is massively underdiagnosed, whether it's, ADHD or ASD, you know, perhaps some overlaps at times between the two, and maybe at times, quite often, on a very high functioning end of one side of things, and then also what could appear or be presenting as being um, obstructive, dismissive, even at times, perhaps coming across as being a bit dyslexic when there's some perhaps problems concentrating in certain ways, and a lot of I think a lot of the problems that seem to occur could well be down to that. I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my school reports, I think my mum found them. I burned them. I shouldn't have burned them because I wish I had them because they were really, the writing was on the wall with them, it was all there. It was all there. I had the evidence that, could do better, needs to pay more attention, all that kind of stuff that was going on in the school.
Yeah.
Now, if the school, I'm just saying that if we could facilitate and hold the space to accommodate why are you like that? What's going on for you? Not, oh, you're just being a pain in the ass. Back to the back of the classroom or get out
Yeah.
and mark you down as just like this is bad behavior. But it's like, no, what's going on? What's happening for you? If we could if we could catch it earlier on and hold the space and be better informed and accommodate that um the conditions that people are really struggling with, then that pipeline that you talked about, that you said the pipeline that I've heard about, where it's going from school to PRUs,
Yeah.
because they end up in PRUs. That's the school for, that's what it is, isn't it? It's a bridge. It's like, oh, you can't be in the mainstream. We're going to put you in this specialist school for naughty kids. But it's not, it's neurodiverse people who just don't have the tools and the resources to deal with it. And then they end up in big boy
Yeah.
institution.
So true. I mean, there are some. So, sadly, it's in prisons. I mean, I'd love it if this was actually a bit more. I don't actually know if it is, but so if it was in schools, it'd be great. My experience has been recently. I've seen. I was lucky enough to do a workshop with Rachel, and the group that we had, um, they had fidgets, fidget. I don't want to say toys, but they had like apparatus that you could fidget in your hands with in the room. We were also, the way that we set the room up was so that it was not like round or looking at each other, but not like in a sort of formal table setting either. It was done in a way where we were presenting from one side of the room, but it wasn't a kind of us and them or a classroom sort of vibe. It was a bit more sporadic, but very easy to see no matter where you were. But there was space for people to get up and move around, and we made it really clear. Don't expect you to sit down. You don't want to sit down. There's these things that you can mess around with in your hands if you need to. There's water over there if you need a drink, And we held the room for 2.5 hours. Because of that, I absolutely believe it was down to that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because it but that, and so that was in collaboration with the healthcare team and with the education team that were understanding of neurodiverse, because we had people coming from all over the prison, and we had 22 men. Every single one of them was neurodiverse in the room. Every single one of them. And unfortunately, in that particular prison, they were all diagnosed. Some of them when they actually got there, but not everybody does. The pathway at the moment is, in my opinion, like it's not working that well. And I think there's there's room for huge improvement, but it's hard. So when you can imagine, for instance, so we get the psychologists and the doctors coming in, particularly for neurodiversity, once a week. Now, that guy will have 1,200 men on quite a quick churn. So it could be a new 1,200 men, or at least a new 600, let's say, every 6 months. You've got 1,200 people roughly coming in once a week. Now, I know I am on the spectrum. I've been clinically diagnosed. It's not something I've assessed at home. It's something I've known for a long time. Like even my school reports were all, it seems to often be daydreaming and looking out the window, could do better, and has ants in his pants.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, in the 80s, they didn't really like give you like good specific examples, but that was quite clear.
That's a classic saying, ants in his
Yeah.
pants. I love that.
And so he's got this. So, but you imagine, so for example, so if you've got 8 hours in the day and you've got somebody like me who can talk as well and who diverts off quite often,
Yep.
even if you booked in everyone solidly, you could see 8 people a week. That's without any issues occurring with the person who might be like me, who ends up talking about something completely different to the question they've been asked for about
Yep.
half an hour.
Yep.
And you've got quite a long assessment form, and it needs to be done in an appropriate manner so that people aren't overdiagnosed but aren't underdiagnosed.
Yep.
So it's very, very challenging even when they get to prison. But we have had, numbers of success stories of people that have managed to get a diagnosis and actually then know officially where they fall within neurodiversity,
Mm.
and then be able to get therapeutic support and pharmacology, obviously, as well, for people that want to explore that. And I think, and I'm all for all of it. Like I've seen significant changes in men that I've worked with that are also on the pathway, have finally got diagnosed, and are then executing actions based on how to help themselves now they know. And also men that are on medication that it has transformed their lives. So,
Yeah.
no, on the one hand, medication isn't for everyone, but I also know it does drastically improve some people's lives.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I've seen that. I've seen that. It's what we was talking about before we hit record about the whole what works for some people might not work for others. It's like you just got to find out what works for you.
Yeah, yeah. And I think when you're actually, if you are lucky enough to get a clinical diagnosis of, let's say, ADHD, for example, and then you work with your psychiatrist and you gain some therapeutic tools that you can use,
Mm.
start to utilize them, and then they offer you an opportunity to try, medication. It's always worth trying, and if it doesn't work, then put it back down, and try something else.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Definitely worth the options if they're there.
I just want to what's come up for me is I just was reflecting, just that prompted me what we're talking about I'm gonna rewind now, hit rewind back to when I first knew you. You was already doing certain practices that were completely brand new to me. And I think I was like a duck to water, I like to think, I feel like as soon as I start to get on a different path and start to walk a different path, everything just felt like, yeah, this is right. This is what I'm meant to be doing. It was a really beautiful thing. You was already not just demonstrating to me how attractive it is to live a really wholesome life, but you was definitely tapping into some methods of practice that were like I'd never done before, you know. I started to learn about things like synchronicity, started to learn about um, just alternative ways of thinking. My mind started to open up. Um, I guess that I was tapping into a spiritual essence, and I think the stigma's been removed from that now, I believe. Maybe there's still a little bit of residual stigma attached to spirituality, but I think it's it's well documented now that, you know, just walking down a beach barefoot is a spiritual practice. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so, or walking in the woods, you know, something
Mm.
quite simple that's just really grounded and connecting to just simplicity, which is what I really needed because you talked about all the shiny stuff that I too was chasing, as you know. I was caught up in all the materialistic stuff, but the simple stuff
Mm.
was what I was lacking in my life, and I really needed it. So I feel like it's a really nice thing to just something came up for me then when we was just talking about this whole thing, because for me, neurodiversity, wherever you are on that, um, when I keep it simple, it's kind of like I need it simple. So I don't know. Would you be so kind, Tony? Share like I don't know. Do you understand? Like, do you know what I mean? I'm just trying to. Where I remember what the stuff you was doing. Are you still living your life? Has it changed over the years? Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like mine has. Some of the
Yeah.
fundamentals are still there. What I need to do every day to keep my mindset and my heart pure.
Yeah. Yes. I remember, I think when we met, I definitely, so I definitely had a good jungle record collection.
You still haven't, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there were some, yeah, really, really important things. And I think, like you said, so I mean, yeah, I mean, 20 years ago, some of the stuff that I'd got introduced to was quite new, like in, although it'd been around for years, but as in, so maybe if you were in Tibet in a monastery, you knew about certain forms of meditation, and maybe if you lived in Japan, you'd been introduced to Reiki. Um, but actually, here in the middle of London, Hertfordshire, or just yeah down south, it was there wasn't that many laymen like us that were you know party animals that transformed their lives and then suddenly had been introduced to stuff. But yeah, I was really lucky that I'd met a few people that were practicing different forms of what is commonly coined spirituality. And what they were doing, they were getting into the moment, and the way they were accessing that was through a few different things. And I think those fundamentals haven't changed for me. But so originally I did a lot of meditation, and so one of the things as well, I lived, as you know, without a TV. I got rid of things that were externally, and 20 years ago that was pretty radical.
I ended up doing the same. I got rid of my TV as well. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I really quickly realized that it wasn't so. It might be a neurodiverse thing, actually, thinking about it now. It's amazing how my brain flitters all over the place. Like, it was no surprise when I got a diagnosis of ADHD, none whatsoever. But it was just nice to actually have somebody like say to me, "Look," so just so that you could feel more comfortable. They only were speaking to me, this psychiatrist, for 15 minutes, and they said we have to go through the process because I've taken them right off on another journey. If I could do it right now, I would, but it's the right thing that we spend the whole hour discussing different things. But I've done it again, I've gone off. Yeah, so we were doing some breath work, and it was about accessing that space, and in the beginning, sometimes quietening the mind and bringing everything into the moment was quite painful, because what I was living with in the beginning, and what lots of people tend to find when they strip it all back, what's left is rather uncomfortable, because it's not known to me, because I've been avoiding it for so long, whether it's through relationships, through food, through gym. through tattoos, through drugs, through alcohol, through whatever shiny pursuit I've been following. It's quite likely I've been avoiding that inner space for some time and certainly blotting it out whenever I could, if it became apparent, perhaps at 4 o'clock in the morning when everyone else was sleeping and I was still wide awake. Getting into that space initially was quite uncomfortable, but I was lucky I was coached and guided by people that had been there and done it before me.
Mm,
One guy called Christopher Dawkins was my first sort of real mentor into the world of meditation. And he let me go inside myself and he let me come back out, when I needed to in the beginning without kind of going, right, so you must sit now cross legged for 20 minutes
mm,
or you haven't meditated. It was like, if you've done it for 3 minutes and it's now become a little bit scary and you've come back out, well done.
yeah,
Maybe we'll go for 3.5
yeah,
within, and we
yeah.
built on it like that. And it was, I suppose it was accessing, yeah, that space inside that was the quiet space that I'd been avoiding for a long time. And eventually, through repetition, consistency, and discipline, the space became okay in its not feeling okay.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And then eventually it got quieter, that space, and it became smoother and it became more and more comfortable. And it actually became what I was running towards rather than running from.
Mm,
I started running faster and faster towards myself more and more when I'd
mm,
actually always been running further and further away from myself. I just didn't know it.
mm,
And that was, yeah, what was really important to me in the beginning was finding that space and then trying to let that space be what was my guiding light for my day-to-day living so that it was more, like you said, what was creating. I remember, in my early days, sometimes I would be in that space, um, you know, think about somebody, and the next thing, I bump into them on the street within
mm,
seconds, and small things like that where I started to see it feels like we're actually all quite connected. I've been so disconnected for such a long time, even at times when I thought I was really connected. You described it before about when you're with thousands of people in Richard Ashcroft singing, and none of you really know each other. You maybe know the group you went with, but you all feel a part of something, and you're all
mm,
one. And yeah, that it's changed slightly. So in the beginning, there was lots of practice of meditation to get clear on what that space is, and then I found that I could get that riding. I've got a road bike. I found I could get it when I was riding my bike.
mm,
And that also doing it on the road meant that I had to be not only in that space, but I had to be aware of my surroundings at the same time, or I was going to die because London buses are pretty big, right? And they don't care if they come and knock you out. So, so I had to be switched on at the same time as being in. And so I started practicing it on my bike, and I realized I'm really in the moment.
mm,
And I was quiet in the same space while I was making sure I didn't die. And then I started doing it to get to work. And so I would arrive at work in that space, having been cycling. And my current thing is I like ice baths and I like going swimming. I'm swimming in a lake tomorrow morning. And
nice.
yeah, I do lots of fitness and there's a local park that I go in early in the morning, generally when there's not as many people around, about 5:30. I have quite a routine, and so I go on an exercise in the morning and then ice bath, and I listen to the parakeets as I'm running, and I can hear and see the squirrels, and it's a local park that I run around and it keeps me fit, it keeps me healthy, but it brings me into the moment. The first crossing, when I walk across the first bit of the park, I literally get into that zone and then carry it on throughout. And then I
Yeah.
have a nice bath, and that really brings it on as well.
Oh, I love this, man.
Yeah,
It just sounds so simple, which it is. That's the beautiful thing about it. It's a really simple premise, but it's really hard to capture these moments, these fleeting moments that they're there all the time.
Mm.
We just have to get our ego out the way, as we know. So everything you described, that's what you turned me on to. Early days, I started to have my own journey with that, and what you shared, I really relate. It's been my experience. I've accessed the same thing, and I enjoy and reap the rewards of the same thing, and it's really, really simple, and it doesn't cost any money.
Oh, no. Do you know what as well? You know, the thing that was probably one of the most helpful things to me, which is really simple, but has become probably my mantra actually for life, is that it's the discipline that breeds the motivation. It's not like I don't wake up, well, I do a lot more these days. I wake up motivated to put my running shoes on and go for a run and then take them off, get naked and get in my ice bath. It's not that I'm always waking up with the motivation to do that, but I'm very disciplined because I know that if I remain disciplined, it's highly likely that 80% of the time I'll actually feel motivated as well. But
Yeah,
that other 20% where I'm not motivated to do it, my discipline will carry me through until I'm back into the 80% where I'm motivated again.
that's exactly how it is.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it, and, and
yeah.
it bleeds it into, so I'm a morning person. I always have been. And again, that's probably something to do with neurodiversity and what have you. And I think lots of people tend to be. And it sets my day up when I do certain things. And it doesn't matter how I sort of feel about it. It matters that I do it because then the benefits come regardless. So I might not feel first thing like I want to do it, but within moments of starting it, I already started to get rewarded massively. And the compounding effect over time has meant that I've made, I believe, a lot less mistakes that I was very familiar with, but was repeatedly doing over and over again, despite the outcomes always being the same. I seem to be habitually repeating patterns of behavior.
Mm,
Don't do that as much anymore by a long shot.
yeah.
That's not come from courses that I've done or any of the psychology that I've learned. It's come from very simple forms of discipline, of
Mm,
self-loving acts, really, I suppose, you know.
yeah. And with that comes, it's just experience. It's like, I've heard it said before, and it's a really simple and quite a common analogy, I think, which is, are you either standing at the side of the pool reading about swimming and the benefits, or you actually in the pool swimming?
Yeah.
Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's that. It's like you've swam, you continue to swim,
Yeah.
and that's been my experience. And to anyone listening, what we're talking about is it's such a simple premise, and it's really, really hard to just it's just starting. Once you start and you can get that sort of belief that it's working for you, that there's something in it for you,
Mm.
and you can see that. And like for me, I needed the evidence that this shit is real, man. Like I need to taste it, I need to feel it, and if I can't do that, then it's probably not worth it, and I'm not going to bother. And I could say that about pretty much everything that's been good for me in my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I totally relate to that.
Yeah.
You know
So,
what? I remember seeing when I was in a residential rehabilitation program, and I remember seeing this was the one before I actually met you. So this was the one back in Hertfordshire, and I remember I think it was on Sundays, people got a family visit for 2 hours, and I didn't get one because my family lives quite far away, and also my family actually needed a little bit of time to heal because they were, quite upset. And they needed to feel secure in if they were going to come and visit me, they weren't going to come away being concerned. Um, And I accepted that. And I was lucky enough that one of the people that was also in there, who was getting a visit from their children, said to me, just come in the garden, you can meet my kids. And I thought, that's a lovely, lovely thing to do, was they were sharing their time as well. Anyway, so I sat in the garden and I remember one of their children, they must have only been about 4. They were running around in the garden, moving their arms up and down like this, and they were flying. And I remembered in that moment, they actually believe 100% that they're flying right now. I can see their legs moving and their arms moving, but in their and what they're embodying right now is the feeling that they're flying. And I had this moment where I realized they're making that all happen. They're actually doing that because they're not full of all of the things you get after the age of 4 happening in life.
Fear.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
fear,
from
the
the
fear, the
yeah.
fear.
They've created that themselves. And it suddenly dawned on me, like, they're completely free. The only difference between me and them is I've filled my brain full of lots of messages from school teachers, from adults, from things that I've read, from ideals that I've created I should have for myself that I haven't met. And many, 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 many other things that I then did to drown all that stuff out and think I was having a
Mm.
great time doing it. I wasn't, I was just getting older. And it suddenly dawned on me, I can do that. I want to. I just need to find out how adults do it because unfortunately I have got this stuff. And so I went on the journey of getting
Mm.
that space with meditation because Christopher, that I mentioned before, was in his late 50s. And I saw it in him and I realized he's got over 20 years on me. If he's managed to get 20 more years of all this stuff happening in the world and messages in the world and he's free, it's something he's doing. So when he said, Tony, would you like to join us for meditation this evening? I said, yes, I fucking would.
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. And it's what you're describing, the way I relate to that is it's like, 'cause it's been my own experience, is it's a reconnection to your child,
Mhm.
the childlike spirit energy of innocence before life happens to us. And
Yeah,
we disconnect from that sense of self and authenticity and purity and the spirit, the essence of just, I'm flying right now, or I'm riding my horse, or whatever it is,
yeah. It's that creative sort of imagination and
Mm,
belief that are, married so easily and so quickly
yeah,
within I would have picking up the horse and running or the
yeah,
moment you clap your hands.
yeah.
I do obviously understand that it's very important that we allow a certain shift into adulthood. And I'm not here suggesting that like that is I would want to do that now with my age and all the worries that we have of life. But what I've what I realized then and what I realize now is there are spaces in my life where I can go into that space, that same space, and use it very, very powerfully to create things that create better outcomes in my life.
Mm,
And that for me, there was a moment where I disconnected with that space when I was a little bit older. But I didn't know. I think some other people in life have not actually disconnected with it. And they seem to have been very successful, very happy on an emotional, spiritual, financial, and, sort of mental, physical way on the whole package.
mm,
I think what I did when I disconnected from it fully was I then actually started seeking it again, but in very unhealthy ways. And so what I've kind of done is sort of reverse it so that I've got it, but use it in the correct way.
yeah,
Um, Try to hold on to it without the ignorance, but with the kind of adult sort of mentality of
yeah,
allowing, you know.
yeah, yeah. I think it's holding on to and expressing um, with that imagination, exploring, being curious in
Mm,
the innocence of play. It's play. It's a playful mindset. the inner child, whatever you want to call it. And then, but knowing when to be in it, and to, like you say, use it as an expression to create really great stuff in your life.
Yeah.
And then there's a fine line between that and just being fucking immature and not taking accountability or responsibility for being a human or an adult in your life and doing adult stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is a gift as well in and of itself. Like I think, you know, perhaps as a result of being disconnected for so long, there are certain things that I'm quite sure I find a bit more extraordinary than some people do, you know.
Mm,
Like for
yeah.
instance, I um I might listen to music with a level of enthusiasm that some other people might not have, you know, or
Yeah.
even sometimes I'll be walking, you know, down the street and I might see something colourful and it might jump out at me in a way that somebody else isn't
Mm,
experiencing. But, you know, I do see that as something that I don't talk about all the time because some people might think I was on acid or something. I do see it as one of the joys of kind of being drug and alcohol free and having broke free from the chains that really locked me into quite a dull lifestyle for a long time, you know, because the
mm,
heyday and the fun part had gone long before I actually managed to stop and stay stopped.
yeah.
And I'm very grateful to be on the planet,
Mm,
still living, still functioning quite well. I've got a bit of tennis elbow, you know, my eyesight's not as great as it used to be, you know, but I'm aging with a life that, you know, I very, very, very easily couldn't have even had, you know. So
yeah. Well, I think that's a really nice place to end it, Tony. I really do. I feel like I could speak to you on what we're talking about for, like, extend it for forever. I could talk about, this, because we're talking about, for me, this is truth. This is your truth. This is, it mirrors my truth. It's a beautiful thing. Um, and for anyone listening who may have found this, does it relate to your truth? And if it doesn't, maybe there's some takeaways here to go and try out for yourselves. Because if it can work for me, if it can work for Tony, maybe it can work for you. I think it's freely available for everyone. It's a really, I feel like the message is, it's really quite simple, isn't it? But it can be really hard to activate the initial spark of enthusiasm to do it. But once you get that, then do you feel it's vital? Because I couldn't do it on my own, right? And you said that with your mentor, you felt like you needed some guidance. I certainly needed some guidance.
yeah, I definitely did. I think I just had so excuse me. So there's yeah, again, two sides. So on the one hand, the one thing that was perhaps stopping me from seeing this was there were certain things in my life that I was much better off at doing on my own because I excelled at them. I now know that that's probably the obsessive nature where I can hyperfixate on something. But around this, it was absolutely pointless. Like I just couldn't do it. And the mentoring was hugely, hugely important, if not essential, really.
Mm,
Because despite how successful I'd been in many, many things, I was never ever successful at switching this on my own. There
mm,
are two things probably the most important things that the last thing that I would say is what I've realized is there are so many ways to skin a cat. It's unbelievable. But having somebody there and just being able to see enough in them to try it is the most important thing in the world because it might be the one that skins the cat for you, and then you'll just go on your journey and find your way. And
yeah.
I was vegan for 3 years. I've tried ketogenic diets. I've tried adjusting my hormones. I've tried energy deficits, energy expenditures, all sorts of different things. And it's a wonderful journey to go on, doing all sorts. So you can try anything you like, but you have to have that initial starting point that you're talking about, to
Mm.
get enough belief and get going. And for me, it was this isn't everybody's case, but one thing that made that a heck of a lot easier was deciding to remove alcohol as well as the substances, because then there was no trigger points for me to use substances. And so I had a very clear platform to start with. Yeah.
Yeah. I recognized that early days. I thought I need to exactly what you said. I've tried to, I won't do that, but
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, do you know what? I just need to stop everything, man. That was my experience. But got to find out what works for you, people.
Yeah.
Um, all right, Tony. Well, look, that's a nice place to leave it. Like I said, I could have you on forever, man. You're someone that I love dearly. You mean so much to me. You're my brother for life. Thank you. Thanks for joining me. It's been beautiful to have you on.
Thank you,
And
Fred.
yeah, you're doing great work, man. You're an inspiration. You really are. And I look forward to seeing you soon, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. Big love, Dave. Honestly, thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, it's great. Yeah. So in some ways, I can't believe me and you are still alive. We're still here, And in some ways, I totally can, because we did make changes and we stuck to them. And then we were willing to try other things and explore life.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's a radical, you used the word earlier, it's a radical act to go against the stream of convention, man.
Yeah.
It's a bold thing to do. It takes a lot of courage to do that, but it's been my experience that it's a decision that I've never ever regretted.
No.
So thanks, man. All right, Tony. Keep doing the great work, man. I'll put a link in
Brilliant.
and have a great day, mate.
And you.
See you later, man.
Take care, Dave. Bye.
Bye bye.